doing the dance.
I'll figure it out.
All right. Welcome back to the I Love Annuities podcast. I'm Jeremiah Conger.
And I am Zachary Van Ness. Together we are the Annuity Dudes. Oh, Steve, you could have chimed in there.
I will. Just give me 5 minutes. I will.
We'll wrap it up. You got to chime in on the last one at least. Today's a special episode because we're taking you inside our own firm, Annuity Association, to show you exactly who we are and what we do, and ultimately how we're shaking up the annuity buying experience.
That's right. And joining us today is someone you're going to love hearing from, our co-founder, my business partner, and our chief financial officer and all-around annuity guru, Mr. Steve Rowswell.
That's right. Steve has been in the trenches of this industry for years. He's one of the reasons we built Annuity Association into the transparent educational platform it is today. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Guys, thank you. It's great to be here. I've been listening to your podcast since you launched the Annuity Dudes, and now I finally get to sit in the hot seat. I'm excited.
Well, we're really excited to have you, man. I know it's been a long time coming, so let's go ahead and kick it off. So, Steve, I think it'd be a good moment real quick to take our listeners back to the very beginning. We're talking about 2019 when you and I decided to launch Annuity Association, because this wasn't just a let's start a business move. We saw something in the industry that needed to change.
Yeah, I remember those conversations vividly, Jeremiah. It all started with a road trip that we took together to a city in the middle of the state called Orlando. And we were both looking at the annuity space, and it was pretty interesting because, as the folks can see, is I'm a little bit older, so I look at the overall realm of the marketplace a little bit different. And I recognize, because I had experience going back, even 30 years before we decided to put this organization together, and working in the annuity space, and there are a lot of good products out there. I've always said that an annuity product wouldn't exist unless it had a reason, but the real challenge is getting the right annuity into the right hands of the person, and that has to begin, I believe, with an experience that surrounds itself around education, and that was one of the things that Jeremiah, you and I talked about to begin with, and that is that we felt that annuities were being sold and that they really should be bought, and that there's a whole different way to be able to explain this story. Way too much pressure in the industry, very little transparency, and way too many consumers that I felt, you felt, were making really lifelong decisions, and they were really making those decisions in the dark. And I think we came to the conclusion that working together, we could probably create a better user experience. And I think that's what we've been able to do.
Yeah. So to take it back to 2019, mind you, this is just before COVID. Steve and I actually met at a different financial firm that I had just started with, and Steve was starting with. And that firm was really designed more around life insurance and other types of financial planning. And I'll never forget, we were on our way to a conference in Orlando, as Steve mentioned. And, Steve was asking me what I thought about that firm that we were with at that time. And I'll never forget that, the night before, I was really kind of pondering my thoughts around whether or not that firm was a right fit for me. And what led me to believe that, or even start thinking about that, was the fact that I had a meeting that week right before that conference. And it was with a beautiful family out in middle part of Florida. And they had an interest in growing their retirement nest egg and doing so more in a more conservative or protected manner. So they were a prime candidate for a fixed indexed annuity, at least I thought. And I went back to the manager of that firm at that time, and I asked him, what his thoughts were around this case and how an annuity could be positioned as a right fit. Agreed, but then when it came down to that decision-making process of what recommendation we would make, his response when I asked him what he thought kind of threw me off the rails, and it was basically along the lines of, "Just pick one. Like, whatever one you think is best, just go ahead and position that one to him, and that's the way it works." And I, scratched my head, like, kinda questioning whether or not he was actually being honest about that, and sure enough, he was. And, since, since I've ever been involved in any sort of business, ethics and integrity have always been the glue that holds my foundation together. And when he responded in that way, it just didn't sit right with me. I could not go to that family and make a recommendation without knowing in my heart that it was truly the right thing for them. And so I went to the drawing board and I went to create this spreadsheet. Back then, we're talking 6 or 7 years ago now. As little of an amount of time as that sounds, there's been so much advancement in regards to technology in our industry. But back then, there was no data aggregation technology that could bring all of the annuities into the marketplace into a system to then rank and chronologically sort through them, to help us as advisors identify the best solutions for those particular clients in their situation. So I built an Excel sheet, and I was going through the 10 or 11 products that firm offered at the time, which was another pain point for me, was the fact that we didn't have access to all of the products. We had a limited set. And after doing the analysis on that Excel spreadsheet, I had an idea of what I believed to be the best product for them out of the 10 or so that we had. But even then, I knew that there had to be a better way, because this firm, who was pretty highly regarded in our industry, only offered 10 products, 10 indexed annuities. And when I found out that there were hundreds of these products available, it really made me question whether or not that firm was doing and acting in the best interest of the clients that they represented. And that's where I had that light bulb moment. And that's when, Steve and I were driving in the car and he asked me what I thought. And that's when I was very passionate to share my idea around how we could do better, how we could offer a better solution and ultimately a better annuity buying experience that addressed all of these wrongdoings that we had been exposed to in our industry. And that's ultimately what was the driving force behind our firm. And I'll never forget the night before we went on that car ride to Orlando, I was playing around on GoDaddy.com to think about what this business name and domain would be. And I was typing in everything. I mean, annuity this, annuity that, and everything was taken, or it was like for sale. The domain was for sale for like this exorbitant amount of money. And then I thought of an association. I don't know why that came to me, but I typed in annuityassociation.com, and it sure enough said it was available. And I was like, well, I must have spelled something wrong, like I must have spelled annuity wrong or association wrong. So like I was double and triple checking that. And it was more of almost like a blessing from God that domain was available. So I immediately secured it for like $20, and here we are, 6 or 7 years later, and we're really changing this industry for the better. And it's something that we've really become extremely passionate about, and that is making sure that we are being disruptive in this antiquated industry for the benefit of the consumer.
Jeremiah, I very much remember that car ride. I remember that conversation. And I remember how passionate you were. And I remember the thoughts that were going through my mind. And it was very heartwarming for me. And the thought that was going through my mind was, wow, I'm getting the chance to associate myself with someone that really has good core values. And then as we continued our conversation and we chatted more, I think that we realized that both of our core values are very, very similar. And at that point in time, that was really when the culture of our company was being birthed. And I said, hey, Jeremiah, I go, I think we can do this. In fact, I know we can do this, and it does need to be done. So we knew that the industry was ripe for change. It's still very much in its infancy of change. We wanted, I think we're part of the change management culture to bring a better annuity buying experience, which really goes all the way back to that initial thoughts that you had in that comparative analysis. And we started down that road. And from day one, our mission was to flip the script, bringing, we call it transparency and education front and center, to the consumer, so that they actually understand all of the intricacies that are associated with the annuity marketplace and the annuity buying experience. Because
Exactly.
the experience is, if it's educationally based and you bring transparency to it, it then allows the consumer really to begin building confidence in themselves and building confidence in their decision, because ultimately it's their decision. And it was really refreshing having that first ride to find someone that was of like mind as myself. And I think that is one of the cornerstones and the reason why the Annuity Association has blossomed to where it is today. And it's one of the cornerstones of the overall culture of our organization. And that was that conversation that we had on that car ride.
Yeah. Nobody has said it better than you, Steve. And I use this all the time in our team meetings is, we don't just sell annuities, right? That's not what we do. And we're not just an annuity advisory firm. What we do is we sell confidence to the consumer. And you said it best that we specialize in helping our clients help themselves make a better decision, and a confident one at that, without pressure, without sales pressure and shady sales tactics. We really focus on lifting the clients or consumers' confidence in what they're looking at and how they ascertain the information for this marketplace, to ultimately put them in the driver's seat to make an empowered decision. And I think that's really the specialty or the secret sauce, if you will, of why we've been successful. And, we talked about peeling back the curtain on how annuities work. And we incorporated that entirely into our virtual process. I'll never forget this too. Back in 2019, when Steve and I were first starting this, Steve's a bit older than I, obviously. And that old dog, thought it would be impossible for us to position our buying experience 100% virtually online. Steve came from the old school days of meeting face to face, which, is great. And I still believe that is a tried and true way of doing business. But, for me, I come from a background of technology. I was one of the first generations to grow up with cell phones. And so having a bit of tech background there and having a comfort of dealing with technology when it comes to business dealings, I believe that in order to really fulfill our mission of creating a better annuity buying experience, we had to address that from A to Z. When you talk about finances, when somebody's talking about finances and their future and retirement and all of these things, it's a very intimate discussion, and it can be very uncomfortable in general. I mean, these are discussions and topics that sometimes spouses don't even talk to each other about. And so when it comes down to creating a better annuity buying experience, I wholeheartedly believe that we should be able to have these discussions with people, number one, when they're ready, but also number two, in the comfort of their own home. In other words, being able to leverage technology like Zoom or Google Meeting or whichever platform you prefer to be able to have a trust building meeting that's still face to face and eye to eye through, cameras, but being able to allow that person to be comfortable in their own home alongside their spouse or whoever, and start to discover how annuities may be a good fit. So when I had proposed that to Steve, he looked me dead in the eye and told me that I was absolutely crazy for thinking that anybody would trust a younger guy over the internet with their life savings. And at first I was like, you know what, he might be right. But then the more, I'm kind of strong-willed. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to prove this old dog wrong. And luckily I was on the right side of that. And I'm so happy that I was, because we've been able to start to deliver on our true mission of helping people. That's ultimately what we're about. And being able to cast a broader net across the entire country allows us to help more people than we would be able to in our local general market, meeting people face to face. So it created efficiencies of scale for us, because, instead of having 2 or 3 meetings a day, I had 6 to 7, maybe 8 meetings a day at one point when I was meeting face to face with clients. Now we've been able to scale our advisor team, and Zach Van Ness, one of our senior annuity advisors, he's able now to meet more people in a digital capacity through Zoom than if he was to work for a firm that was more of a traditional face-to-face approach. And for that, we're very thankful that we have the opportunity to do that. So,
Jeremiah, I remember those experiences, and I'm going to relate this a little bit differently. This is a second cornerstone, and the reason why the Annuity Association is able to help people the way that it is able to help people. And that is that Jeremiah and we do a really good job of listening to each other and in conversing and really trying to find out, why are you saying that, Jeremiah? And he's going, why are you saying that, Steve? And that added to the values in the culture of our organization. And then we extended that. Now I'll give you an example. I would put my I put my spreadsheet prowess up to anybody that has a spreadsheet, and I could create any analytical response to any question and show it to somebody through the use of spreadsheets. And what I didn't really understand, which is what Jeremiah brought, is how do we communicate that to the consumer where the consumer will really understand what it all means. And that's when Jeremiah came up with something that I think is another cornerstone and the reason for the success for our organization. And we call it the multi-point annuity inspection. And it's through the process of communicating with our prospective clients and looking at the multi-points and really trying to help them dig into their own souls to really understand why they're looking at annuities. And when you take them through this multi-point inspection versus this spreadsheet that they probably would never understand, that the light bulb went off for the overall organization and the direction of the Annuity Association changed. I mean, we were real close. If you remember, right before we really made that change, we were really close to saying, hey, we're a couple pretty sharp guys, but we're obviously not doing something right. And we decided that we would pivot and try this process of communication. And it's the communication with the consumer to help us, help them, help themselves. And that's what birthed what we call the multi-point annuity inspection. And we wanted to create an objective scoring system so clients could see in black and white how that multi-point annuity inspection actually works. So we kind of put the combination of the two ideas together, and that's why we are where we are today. I think you understand where I'm going with that, Jeremiah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, looking back, launching in 2019 was perfect timing, is right before that whole COVID crisis, right? Remember the mask situation? And they
Yes.
had shut down our local office, if you remember, Steve. And you and I were starting to really scratch our heads around how the heck are we going to build this new company if we can't meet people, if we can't talk with people. And, we had a vision for this virtual process. And that 2020 event with COVID really was the silver lining in all of it, was that it was ultimately a catalyst to drive us to become 100% virtual sooner than later. But also it was a multiplier of consumers to learn how to navigate their business dealings in a virtual capacity online. And so we were primed for that opportunity. And it was a huge opportunity to start righting the wrongs of this industry, which ultimately became our driving force and still is today.
Yeah,
And
that was one of the seeds that God planted in our business. It was we were very lucky. Fortunately, we embraced technology. We actually had already begun doing some Zoom calls, but when COVID came out, I remember spending many times helping folks my age and even older, try to figure out how to get on a Zoom meeting to be able to begin sharing their experience. And it was very enlightening to me to watch my generation and even the generation a little bit older than me grasp this new technology and actually watch them kind of get birthed into how to be able to use it. And I think a lot of folks are really happy. Even in, I'm 70 years old, so even people my age are very happy that they know how to do it, because it really is a force multiplier. And we were very fortunate that we had adopted that, and that's another one of the cornerstones in the ability for you and I, Jeremiah, to be able to see that and then be able to figure out quickly how we can adopt that to be able to help people. And we mastered that. And that really was the proof in the pudding that what you said, even a half a year earlier, was absolutely right. And that is that as long as we educate people, we bring value for the time that they spend through this process of educating them and using our processes, one being the multi-point annuity inspection, that if we listen and use these medias, the folks will react with that. And they did, and they do, and they appreciate it. And it multiplies their time because they can actually do their homework and do their decisioning in the comfort of their homes, where they don't have to walk out into the community, go to a particular office. So the industry totally changed. And I will say that with those thoughts, that the Annuity Association is one of the fastest growing virtual businesses in the annuity space today. And it's because of the culture and the values that we brought along with the use of the new technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. So fast forward to now 2025, and having the opportunity and the honor and privilege to serve thousands of consumers with helping them make better annuity buying decisions, and being recognized recently by the Inc. 5000 as a fastest growing company in the United States, ranked 294th overall and number 21 in the financial services category. It's a true testament to the fact that if you do the right thing by the client, growth will follow. Growth is a byproduct of doing the right thing and exchanging true value. That's what growth stems from.
And in
And
our
Steve, why don't
particular,
you highlight the key differences between us and the industry norm that most people are now starting to steer away from?
I think when you incorporate with that and those values, that the another one of the cornerstones of our success is that we've been able to take the values that you and I possess in building these companies that we put together, and now recreate them and duplicate them through our educational means, and then bring really sharp young people, attract them to our business like Zach Van Ness, and then to be able to replicate what we've been able to do. And we've been successful in doing that, and that's in itself is not an easy task. And we make sure that the quality of the service and that the values of the overall business that we brought together at the very beginning extend themselves to each one of our members. And I think that's another major accomplishment that the Annuity Association has done. So it doesn't need to be me speaking with someone, though anybody's welcome. I do speak with people. I help out our members all the time in the background, but you and I, Jeremiah, don't have to be the ones that actually work directly with the consumers because of the great education system that we put in place that allows our members, such as Zach, to be able to follow the values and follow all the cornerstones that we laid in place. And the result of that is, we wake up, and 5 years later, and we find out that we're the number 294th fastest growing companies in the United States of America, which is really remarkable, especially with the number of people that we do it with. But, we're also the 21st fastest growing company in the United States in the financial services industry. So not only are we growing when you compare around all industries, but we're becoming a leader in the overall financial services. And it all goes back to those core values that started out with that car ride that we discussed.
Yep, that's right. So, it starts with education, not a sales pitch. And, when it comes to helping our consumers and prospective clients make better annuity buying decisions, we do that by helping them compare the entire marketplace, not just one or two companies. Everything we do regarding recommendations, we put everything in writing. We provide clear, plain English, concise explanations of how we determined, whatever product it is to be the right product for that objective. And we share that with you through detailed notes in writing. And we give clients plenty of time to make their decisions without any pressure or discomfort. So that's how we differ from the industry norm. We believe that annuities should be bought, not sold. And that, if you're working with somebody and they're starting with the sales pitch, obviously that red flag should come about, and you definitely want to start looking at other ways that you can get the information you need to make a decision. But ultimately, it's about giving you everything you need: education, transparency to the entire marketplace, and everything in detailed explanations in writing to help yourself make a better decision. That's what we are adamant about. So
absolutely, Jeremiah. So let me spend a minute and talk, if I may, of our vision looking into the future, which is really very, very simple. And this is really what I'm spending most of my time doing, and why I've kind of come back from the production environment. And I'm over here making sure that we're advancing the overall enterprise. And we want to raise, and we are raising, because we're building the technologies to be able to raise this. And that's raise the standards for the overall industry, which is to take the standards and make it educationally bound, so that it's an education process, it's a transparency process, and it's all designed to empower the consumer, which is kind of the exact opposite way that the industry has grown for almost a century. But the industry is ripe for adoption. It's ripe for disruption, and it's for the better for the consumer. And I'm making sure from my chair where I sit is that we're building technologies that are being used to be able to ultimately help the consumer to help themselves. So if we keep doing our job right, we believe that overall shift will just keep moving in the direction, and it's to the benefit of the consumer.
Couldn't agree more. Well, let's have have Zach come back in. I'm sure he's been bored to death with our going back and forth, Steve. So let's get Zach back in here to help us unpack, what annuity associations specialize in. Zach, what can, somebody that's maybe taking a look at the annuity marketplace for the first time, and they're, starting to see that this subject matter can be somewhat complex. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but what can they expect to benefit from in meeting with someone like yourself?
Yeah, I think what sets us apart, and by the way, I don't mind hearing the story. I love hearing it, actually. It brings back the passion of why you guys created it, and drives my passion that much more too. So the three main pillars, when I look at this and the value that we're adding, the three main pillars starts first and foremost with education. We're providing clients with an education of annuities that they likely haven't received somewhere else. How the annuities work, how they compare to other products out there, and really what to look out for. Where are the pros and cons? Every annuity has a guarantee. What's the guaranteed element that we're driving towards? That would be first and foremost for me. Next would be the transparency. And that's part of it, right? We peel back the curtain. We take a look at everything, the fees, features, again, those pros and cons that come with these annuities. They're not going to do everything for you. They have defined purposes. We need to make sure it does that specific purpose for you. And lastly is just that marketplace evaluation. Part of our time that we spend with our clients is comparing the entirety of the marketplace to find the right fit for their unique situation. And we do that with the multi-point annuity inspection, and we compare those products side by side.
So I think that's key what you just conveyed, Zach, in that inspection is the key, to really be able to inspect and to really be educated enough to even understand what you're inspecting. So that's why we ask that each of our members, and Zach's a member. Notice that he's not an agent. Notice that he's not a salesman. He's a member of our organization. So we culturally handle people completely different. But what Zach has been educated to do is to help people evaluate annuities on 5 basic criteria. And these are criteria that Jeremiah and I have talked a lot about. And where are the value propositions in an annuity? Where are the areas that an individual that's trying to make a decision, what they really need to know? And the first is very simple. What is the highest guaranteed income? But that's not the answer. That's not the answer for the entire why somebody might want to look at an annuity. They might want to consider carrier ratings. They might want to get an understanding of what the index crediting potential is, which is a whole education process in itself. And we do a lot of training in regard to making sure our members understand indexes, how they're structured, the methodologies that they use in their structuring, and then the potential for the crediting. And we actually use third-party resources, some of the most brilliant brains in the industry, to be able to help us in these index evaluations. And we spend a lot of time educating our members, so our members are able to educate if a consumer wants to ask questions about indexes. Another very, very important feature that's in annuities, the income riders, and very, very important, the fees that are associated with income riders. See, we're transparent, and we let folks know from the very beginning, what are the fees and why are the fees, and why do the fees have value? Because the fees do have value. You get something for the fees. You just need to be explain what those values are. But then another area is an area called enhanced income benefits for long-term care. So Jeremiah and I talked about this from the very beginning, and then Jeremiah created this. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, Jeremiah?
Yeah, it's ultimately, the multi-point annuity inspection's ultimately like a report card for evaluating annuities. And so you're not just hearing from somebody that this is the best product. You're actually seeing and learning why and how that product lines up to your overall objectives and goals, but also how it compares to the other two or three, four or five, six, whoever knows how many other products that you may be looking at. You're going to be able to chronologically rank them highest to lowest according to what you believe to be the most important when it comes to these features and benefits. Um, One of the ways that we kind of came up with this, and I kudos to Zach Van Ness here because he helped come up with the name for the annuity inspection. We had the process. He's like, why don't we call it this? And I was like, that's pretty genius. But when you think of it, like what other types of industries leverage like an inspection? One that comes to mind is when you go to buy like a certified pre-owned vehicle. They always say they went through their 32-point inspection, right? They check the brakes, they check the engine, they check the cosmetics or the aesthetics of the exterior and the interior, so on and so forth, to make sure that it's sound. And that's the same way that we do the the annuities, is taking a look at all of the components, all of the features and benefits, the fees, all of the other um, attributes or aspects of the product, and then we inspect them and then compare them to the rest of the marketplace to see, is this truly the best product based on the way that these inspection points line up to the client's desires and their needs and objectives.
Yeah, and from my end of it, and coming on board when I came on, this was a big component and why I had the passion and belief behind the company. From my end of it, previous career and mortgage as a loan originator, I had some tools that I could offer, but month in and month out, each company may be different in the rates that they offered. Maybe one mortgage company was more competitive in their rates than they were the month prior. And I just didn't have all the tools at hand. And once we walked through this and I understood it, and I said, okay, not only do I have all the tools available for our clients, but I have this process in place where I know that I can provide some trust and understanding about how they work. Now I've got something more. And it bled over to that passion that I have now today of being able to say, we've got a process here. We're offering all the potential solutions. And when the clients see this full picture and realize that they have it at their own fingertips, they can make these decisions on their own, they realize they're not being sold, right? They're just being advised, hey, here's what's out here. Make the decision yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately, that's what creates the trust in the process, is that they're actually, it's not trusting us per se, which they do, I guess, learn to trust us through this process. But really, where the magic happens and the true benefit of our prospect working with us is that they learn to trust themselves, because now they have the information at their disposal that they need to make a better annuity buying decision. And they feel naturally that they're not being sold something, and that they're truly being advised, and that they also can advise themselves in a way, and also speak with their spouse or loved ones about it too. That helps them build confidence in that person's ability to make that buying decision. And that's ultimately what it's about. And we actually call that, we have a coined phrase for it, and it's called lifting the annuity IQ. That's ultimately what the benefit is in working with us, is that we're going to lift your annuity IQ to a higher quotient so that you have more confidence and more clarity in how you evaluate the marketplace, but ultimately building trust in yourself along the way to make a decision, because ultimately that's what it's about. Steve and I had gone back and forth when we first started. Before we had our process lined up and drilled in, and that was that, Steve being more analytically minded than myself, he really wanted to look at making annuity recommendations holistically with like factoring in all of these other data points from the other financial aspects of their picture, of the financial picture. And ultimately, I felt like while it was good and it had good intent and it was really for the betterment of the client, what happened is it brought too much complexity to the decision-making process. And ultimately, those people would get paralysis by overanalysis and ultimately not do anything. They would just freeze and not buy. And that's when I had to talk with Steve and I said, look, man, we want to help people. That's really what we're about. We want to help people. And if we, without a doubt, believe annuities are right for these people, because sometimes they're not. Annuities aren't a one size fits all and the best thing since sliced bread for everybody, but they can be very impactful and optimal in most cases when appropriately applied to an overall financial plan for retirement. And I had to tell Steve, hey, man, if we are giving them too much data and they can't make a decision and they ultimately do nothing, then we're not delivering on our mission of helping people. Because if they don't buy what we know without a doubt wholeheartedly is right for them, then we're doing them a disservice. And so we kind of had to pivot. And that's where focusing strictly on lifting that annuity IQ was, just ultimately the essential, quintessential thing to do for those people, to help them believe themselves that what they were looking at was the right thing, and how to evaluate them and empower them to make a better decision.
Absolutely. So Jeremiah, I'm going to give a little pitch here. So I'm really one of the annuity nerds. And there's another annuity nerd that will come on in the future, and we are nerds, and that's where I'm going, and that is lifting the annuity IQ. I had to lift my annuity IQ. So coming from the nerdy side of the financial services industry, in the analytical side, I had to reprogram myself to understand, where does an annuity fit and why does it fit? And for my mind, because I'm kind of nerdy and as Jeremiah said, analytically prone, that's an understatement. I'm very analytically prone. If you ever get a chance to work with me, if you ever need to know how to write an Excel spreadsheet, I could probably help you out. And then if I can't, our CFO, our CTO definitely can. But it's annuity IQ. So let me give you a little bit of history. Okay. So I started in 1980, and I was on the equity side of the business. Annuities existed, but I was on the equity side. I was working with the broker-dealer community and big-time stockbroker. And back then, it was all about the accumulation phase of someone's life. How much money could I amass over time? People were working. You're helping them out to be able to build their nest egg bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it wasn't until 1987, when there was a stock market crash, and I saw how the overall marketplace really worked, and in that particular case, how it really broke, that I changed my hat, and my hat was, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way. And I retired from the broker-dealer side of the industry and really dug in to learn about annuities. And it really becomes a combination, as somebody is going through that transition point of their life where they're going from accumulation and they're getting ready to retire, and then they go and retire, and then they live in the retirement years. And I came to the realization that there's basically two types of planning. There's financial planning and there's retirement planning. And financial planning is really pretty easy. Retirement planning is a bear. It's a challenge, because what you need to do is you need to be able to create an environment that somebody's going to work with them for the rest of their life, and they've gone past their paycheck earning period of their life. So the decisions that need to be made have to be really thought out. And I came to the conclusion that the only way you can do that is to increase your annuity IQ. And then we extended that. And that's that educational process that we want to help people extend their annuity IQ so that they can make a very educated purchasing decision for an annuity, which, by the way, annuities definitely fit in the retirement scheme. The question is, which one and how much to accomplish your why? So once you can work with somebody and get them to really open up and tell you why they're looking at annuities, what are they trying to do, then, because there's so many different types of annuities, and even in the types of annuities, there are so many different features of the annuities that a schooled member can then line up the whys of the consumer because they've gone through these processes and they've increased their annuity IQ to determine how much of my nest egg do I really need to put into an annuity that's going to give me guaranteed lifetime income versus how much should I have over here in an annuity that's going to give me preservation of my capital with the opportunity for fair growth to offset inflation. And then how much should I have in my market accounts to be able to offset the overall forces of inflation? Well, to be able to figure that out, you have to increase your annuity IQ because two of the three baskets where you need to have your retirement funds should be in a combination of income annuities and growth annuities. So that was kind of a divergence, but that's what the annuity nerds do. That's what I do behind the scenes, is to help all of the members. Zach gets the opportunity to help me coach our members in regard to that, because the concept and the idea is if we impart all of this knowledge on our members, then they can help the consumers make a better purchasing decision, building their confidence because they understand through a process of education how all these parts fit. Something my dad taught me when I was a young guy that I think is really, really important. And that is that when you take a complex subject matter and you can make it simple where the layperson or somebody that's not a subject matter expert in that particular topic can understand it because of the way you communicate with them, then you've really mastered at that point your subject matter. And I think that's what we've done here at the Annuity Association through our training, through our processes of education, and it's extending itself. And that is we're really lifting the annuity IQ of everyone that we touch.
Yeah. And ultimately with that, when clients understand those mechanics of those annuities, the difference between the annuity types, whether that's a multi-year guaranteed annuity, a single premium income annuity or immediate annuity, understanding that they really start to ask better questions and more detailed questions. So now there's engagement and we're fully entrenched with the questions that are important, and we start to find out more about their why.
Exactly. We want to empower people to be very active and participants in their retirement planning. It actually makes our work better and it makes our work easier the more we can educate them so they can understand what the values are of the annuity space in their overall retirement planning. Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's why.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
And that's what lifting the annuity IQ is all about, Jeremiah and Zach.
And I know that I've talked to Jeremiah about this before. We've had these meetings with clients and they say, okay, well, what would you recommend? There are some cases where we just don't know enough about our client to make a solid recommendation. And oftentimes it's just part of that, understanding what the goal is before I can say clearly, hey, John, this is my opinion for you.
Yeah, I can feel that. And that's something that I still do. And when I get the opportunity to work with a client, a lot of times behind the scenes, I'm still doing my spreadsheets. And then people go, well, why are you doing that? I go, because I want to know what's the best thing for you. And my way that I do it is I happen to do it through spread. I want to know myself. I want to know that this is the best thing I can think of based on everything that somebody can give to me through what their why is and their real deep why is. And the more information they can provide to any of our members or to me through working with any of our members, it becomes a better annuity decision because the annuity IQ, and then we can go back and we can help the consumer in the particular annuity that might make sense for them to make sure that they really understand through the multi-point inspection process, that they really understand how this particular type of annuity, it fulfills the requirements of the why for their overall experience, which I call the retirement experience.
And sometimes too, we keep talking about the why. Sometimes too, it's not just an economic answer to address the why. It's also a psychological answer and how the annuity is addressing the why. That's really where I believe the value exists in an annuity and where the true optimization comes about. And that's not just by improving economically the overall plan now and into the future, but also the psychological aspect of giving somebody peace of mind, clarity, and confidence that regardless of what happens with all the uncontrollables of the market moving forward, that their retirement plan is sound and bulletproof and ultimately unbreakable because that income foundation is supported by the annuity and the other guaranteed sources that they have between Social Security and or pensions. And that's really the key, is to understand the psychological aspects, because when you think about when people buy things, right, we're always trying to buy things to solve problems, and those problems that we have in our mind are what we believe and associate with pain. Not pain from like a physical aspect or necessarily just an emotional aspect, but just pain of the unknown. Like we have this pain of like why we need to fill, we have something that we need to fill. It's from a void or a gap. And when you think about retirement, which is a brand new phase for all of these people, there's 11,000 people turning 65 every day this year. We had an episode on it called Peak 65. And all of these people are entering this new phase of life that they've never charted before, never navigated. And the one thing that we all associate with our financial security is income. And when people retire, most people now don't have those pensions any longer. So their retirement income is a gap. There's a void there. And so that's where the annuity picks up the slack and fills that void. But it's the psychological aspect of the annuity that then provides that security that person yearns for now and into the future, and for a lifetime. That's the other benefit of the annuity, right?
For a lifetime. That's the challenge. And when you're converting that paycheck to that effective pension by using the income rider features of an annuity, it becomes, that gets into that psychological realm that you're beginning to talk about. How do you use that? Because the loss of that paycheck, there's a psychological aspect to the loss of that paycheck. How can I effectively replace it and know that I got basically a paycheck coming in guaranteed between my social, if I happen to have a pension, which most people don't, and then where do I get that guaranteed offset of that not having that pension to that guarantee in the annuity income rider? That's great, but the psychological side of that thought to get somebody across that barrier is very, very interesting. And I come back and I go back and I go, what are our competitors doing? How are they trying to get people across? Well, unfortunately, and I think it's the reason why I pulled all my hair out, is that unfortunately they use tactics like fear, greed, remorse, and they make it a highly emotional, state versus taking the annuity IQ realm, the education realm. And I know that I get very fulfilled when people go through, and I get so many people that thank me for helping them help themselves. I mean,
Yeah, 100%.
It's a psychologically challenging period. Maybe one day I'll get a chance to be invited to come back and I'll talk about another area that I'm working on. I call it stress to relaxation. And it's a combination of this decision that you need to make on your financial health and how it can directly affect your physical health and even your spiritual health. It's a wonderful thought process, and maybe you'll invite me to talk back, but it goes back to this emotional state that I think we do a wonderful job. It's really exciting, and I'm really excited that we've been able to teach. Jeremiah, I think it's one of our biggest accomplishments that we've been able to teach and come up with a process to teach our members how to help our customers navigate through that psychological change.
Yeah. And you see so, you look at an annuity and incorporating it into an overall retirement plan, you've got these economical benefactors or benefits. You have these psychological benefits then that give that peace of mind, clarity, and confidence for a lifetime on their income. But then the other component, which I believe to be just as equally important as the other two, is the behavioral discipline that the annuity provides in the overall retirement plan. Because, Zach and I have done a previous episode on this concept as well, where because people are so fearful in that retirement phase, if they don't have an annuity and they are fearful of preserving their nest egg, they make really poor decisions around timing of when they're getting in and out of the markets based on volatility levels. And the annuity, when incorporated and appropriately applied to the plan to address the income foundation, it allows that person to also optimize their behavioral discipline and the growth elements of their financial plan to stay disciplined and stay in the markets, which we have proven that being in the markets is where growth is the most growth is experienced. But if you're not able to stay disciplined and stay in the markets because of your fear of losing, then you ultimately lose in many ways. And the annuity is what allows someone to behaviorally be disciplined and staying put in the markets and riding the ebbs and flows of those markets long term, which ultimately leads to larger growth and larger legacy for that family and that client.
I'll share a story with you, Jeremiah and Zach. It just happened to one of our early clients, John. Now he's a retired painter. He actually from New York, and he had a job. He was the painter for all the Macy's stores up in the New York area. But long story short, we got together. We talked about our process. He understood, and we took part of his nest egg and put it over into annuities for income, which he hasn't had to turn on. And he left a decent size of money into his stock portfolio. And we were talking the other day, and he said, you're absolutely right. Because I put that money over into the annuities with my stock portfolio, when it goes down, I don't stress out because I know that I always have this over here as far as income. And because of that, he's allowed that emotional state with the roller coaster that's associated with the market to actually begin working for him. And because of that, he's had the opportunity to take advantage of the marketplaces where he said he probably would not have done anywhere near as well because he would have stayed on the sidelines more because he wouldn't have known that he had this backstop. Now, the interesting thing is the reason why he called me. He says, look, I'm getting ready to turn 70 now, and I don't like this lifestyle. And it was funny because a couple of years ago, I said, hey, there's going to be a time that you're going to call me and you're going to say, I want to move more of my nest egg over into income annuities, more of it over into income annuities, and less in the markets because I don't want to have to sit behind my computer and watch it. And instead, I want to be on a cruise. And he called me up and he said, you're right, it happened. And fortunately, because he did not have the stress that was related, he was able to grow his nest egg, and basically he is now able to buy more annuities. But Jeremiah, you're absolutely right. That emotional state that's associated, I think you called it the retirement red zone. You know, that period of time just before or just after that magical 65 or whenever it is that you have figured that you want to retire, how the emotional state changes from prior to that red zone through that red zone. You want to talk about that for just a little bit? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, the retirement red zone, it's something we've discussed on previous episodes, and it's that 10 years before retirement and 10 years into retirement. And what happens is if you don't have a true sound income plan that keeps you disciplined, and you're just investing in the markets, and maybe you're overly invested in the markets in a more aggressive tone than you should be or have a stomach for. And then you have unfavorable sequential rates of return from those markets. If you have an unfavorable sequential rate of return in those 10 years before you retire and after you retire, they can have an everlasting impact on the success of your overall retirement plan and whether or not you're going to have enough money and income to last the rest of your life because of the way that those losses unfold and compound if it's an unfavorable sequence. So we've discussed that, and that's one of the things that annuities do a really good job at addressing. If anything, it's probably the best tool to use to address that risk, which is one of the more popular retirement risks that need to be mitigated through a retirement plan. The annuity is the key star in that role, or the key role of that movie for that retirement and addressing that sequence of returns risk that we all face. You know, real quick, not to get off topic here, but you know, I was just actually pulling up one of my brokerage accounts that I personally have, and you know, one of the things that I talk about it with our prospective clients and on these episodes is how we relate that income that we earn through our employment during our working years as our true financial security. You know, I asked this on our team call the other day, a couple guys that are my age on our team, and I asked them, hey, do you have a financial advisor? And every one of them said no. Well, the question is why? And they said, well, I feel like I don't really need one at this point. Okay, that's a valid answer. But if you really drill down into the why you feel that way, it's because you have earned income that pays all your essentials and sustains your lifestyle. Take that income away and just have that pot of money in a brokerage account, you're going to be real quick feeling like you need an advisor because of all of the unknowns and uncertainty that we're exposed to with the markets ultimately dictating how we live our life and how much income we have to sustain that life. And looking at my own brokerage account right now, picture me now as a 65-year-old about to retire, and this is year 2021. Well, what followed in that next year was where both equities and bonds got slaughtered. And actually, the portfolio that I'm looking at, my balance went down 49% in 2022. Think about that. Almost a 50% loss because I was invested very aggressively in the market. Now, most people at age 65 starting to see their account every time they log in going down, down, down and dwindling and eroding quickly. they're going to pull out of the market. They're going to go to safety, right, Steve? And
Always.
they're going to then think of how do I time getting back in? That's where people make mistakes, is they time it wrong getting out and then when they get back in. Now, because I don't need to worry about that, and I have earned income through this, I'm blessed to have it through this enterprise. The next year, that same portfolio went up 35%. So I would have probably not timed that right and gotten all of that growth, at least most of that growth back. The next year, it went up 31%. This year, it's up to almost 21%. But I probably would have timed that wrong if I did not have income. Income is our security. And it's our job as we enter retirement to have a sound income plan. We can't just be putting it all on faith. We can't just be, using recency bias of these big market returns to address that income plan and say, hey, look, as long as the markets go up 20% every year, I'm going to be just fine. That is not the answer. It needs to be from a more sound, logical, and educational based approach to solidify the confidence level moving forward. And that's where that annuity really shines. Not here trying to sell annuities. I'm trying to educate people on the benefits of them.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. Your emotional factor at your age is completely different than my emotional factor at my age, and it should be that way. Fortunately, I'm blessed where I do still have earned income. But if I didn't have earned income, I can tell you my decisions would be different with my non-annuity assets. But it's because I do have my annuity assets that I can think that way along with the earned income. But even taking the earned income away, because I have the annuities, I wouldn't be so emotional about the volatilities in the marketplace. That's really good. So I know we have just a few more minutes, Jeremiah, and only because it's the first time that I've been on here, I think it's only fair that I give just a little bit of background. Would you want me to give a little bit of my background, or do you want me to save it for another day?
Well, I think you kind of highlighted it for the most part, but if you want to, give another few bullet points there, and move right into your role now as a CFO and what you're doing here on the day to day, I think that would probably be some valuable information.
I'm going to kind of want to bridge that, and it's I've been blessed to have a lot of very unique experiences, all in the financial services industry. From being an equity stockbroker to being in corporate finance, to running multi-billion-dollar projects for Department of Defense companies, managing budgets, cash flows, investment portfolios. All of those experiences have led to where I am now as the CFO. And I say this because my role is to make sure that we have the tools in place to help people. We have the technologies in place. Some of the future podcasts, we may invite some of our other partners on, and we call the annuity nerds, and we can talk about technologies, but making sure that and the infrastructures are in place to give the state of the art. And I can assure you to the public that we have the state of the art technologies in place to prove and provide the most transparency in client-friendly annuity buying process in the industry. Nobody else is doing what we're doing. And it's really exciting. I have a lot of fun because I've been fortunate to be in these very interesting positions in my life, that I'm able to bring it all together in the end of my life, to be able to bring an experience that I know it's helping people that need help. It helps them help themselves. So I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm kind of like that little wizard in the back behind the curtain to make sure that Zachary has all the tools that are necessary. Jeremiah and I are chatting all the time to make sure that Zach and every one of our members have all the tools that are state of the art. And that comes from lots and lots of experience, but it all ties back to the value proposition that we have in our organization, which ties back to all the cornerstones that has allowed us to be able to build our organization the way that our organization is built. And Zachary, thank you for inviting me to come on today. Jeremiah, thank you for having me come on today. I hope you'll invite me again.
Pleasure is all ours. Zach,
we're not worthy. We're not worthy. No, I love having you come on, man.
Well, I've had a great time. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Close us out, ZVE.
Go for it, Zachary.
Yeah. So, Steve, thank you for joining us. It's funny because, I've known Jeremiah for a while now, but when I bring the two brains together, I never would have thought the collaboration that you two have created and the ability to work together, because you are two very different brains, and it works great. That's the best part of it. It works, and I couldn't be more proud to be where I am now. So huge thank you to both of you, especially you, Steve, for joining us today. Great inside look at who we are as a firm and what we're creating, how we're doing things differently, and what we'll be doing in the future is even more exciting.
Absolutely. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This is Jeremiah Conger.
This is Steve Rowswell.
And Zach Van Ness. Oh, Steve, you better join in on this.
Oh, here we go.
We are the Dude. Signing off.